Hello, welcome back. I hope you're doing very well. Just a quick little sound design tip or tutorial today. We're going to take a look at a way of making a nice natural shaker sound or tambourine sound, just a nice rhythmic kind of hi-hatty sort of sound basically, that is very easy to do. We just use a couple of samples and a couple of different layers as well. In preparation, I've made a little drum groove which sounds like this, and then on this second track I've just got a 16th note hi-hat pattern which sounds perfectly fine. That works, but it's just boring basically. So what we're going to do is jazz that up a little bit. So first thing we need to do is select our hi-hat track and have a look at the track edit menu, and you can see here we've got one sample on one layer called hat 1. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our second layer and add another sample. We do that by tapping on sample, and whatever you've got loaded into memory will be available. And you'll see here I've got one called hat 2 which I've pre-selected. Now the key to this is to find two samples that sound similar but different somehow. So whether that's a difference in pitch or, just different timbre of some description. So you want them to be similar but not wildly different. The next thing we need to do is go to global, and you can see that our layer plays on velocity. So we change that to cycle. Now what cycle does is every time the note plays, it will cycle between all of the samples you have on the layers. Because we've only got, you can have up to 4. Because we've only got 2, it's going to alternate between those two samples, which will mimic the kind of rhythm that you get from tapping a tambourine or a shaker, and it sounds like this. So you can hear immediately we've got some variation going on now, but it doesn't sound quite right yet. It sounds a bit kind of janky. So what we need to do is just make a couple of changes. So we're on layer 2 now. This is our second sample. And what we're going to do is just drag the end point of the sample in to shorten it. And you can hear that it starts to sound a bit more natural. There's a point somewhere there that starts to sound a bit better. Next thing we can do is go to envelopes and just have a play with our decay. Just adjust your attack and delay until you get something that starts to sound a bit more natural. So that's starting to sound like, actually in this case, it sounds more like a drummer riding on the open and closed hi-hat, but it's just more rhythmically interesting, that single sample. If we go back to the sample tab, we can press it again, and we can see our two sample layers here, hat 1 and hat 2. And we've got controls for changing those, the settings for those two layers. So what sounds quite nice is if we change the velocity on one of them so they're slightly different. So that is again starting to sound slightly more natural to me. And we can change the panning relative to each other as well. So if we give them slightly different positions in the stereo field, in this case left and slightly more left, it now starts to sound more natural, as if there is a drummer in the room basically. And if we unmute our drums, we can see how this all sounds together. Adjust the volume slightly, and we've now got something that rhythmically is much more interesting than just that static hi-hat pattern that we had before. There is another step of humanizing you can do. If we select that clip with our hi-hat pattern on it, and we go to the clip editor, we have a little tab up here called Edit. And if we tap that, we've got a bunch of different options, one of which you'll see is Humanize. Now, this gives you a lot of different options. Humanize Time, which will add some variation or some randomness into the timing of it. We don't want that because we want our shaker to sound quite sort of on the beat. Note length, which will basically is like gate. It will change or add some randomness to how long the note plays for. Again, we don't want to do that. But Humanize Velocity is basically how hard the notes are playing, which roughly equates to volume. And we do want to change that. So we're going to tap that, and you can obviously set how strong this effect is. We don't want it to be wildly noticeable. So we're going to hit do it. And if we now look at that clip and press this button, which shows us our velocity, you'll see it's added some kind of variation or some humanization to the velocity layers for each different note. So if we play that now, and unmute our drums. Balance our volume a little bit. We've got something that sounds a little bit more interesting rhythmically than just a straight on the beat hi-hat pattern. Obviously the results you get will change depending on the samples you use and how you set the start and end points. Also putting some reverb on this will make it sound a lot better as well. Anyway, I hope that's useful. Little tip, if you enjoyed it or found it useful, give me a like and subscribe and all that YouTube nonsense that we have to do for the algorithm. Cheers, thanks very much, bye-bye.